Many of you, as you sit here or watch from home or however you're consuming this at the moment, as you sit there, are in some form of pain. For some of you, it's physical pain. It's like your back or your head, or some of you are nodding your head like, yeah, it's actually everything. Some of you, it's because of old age. I got out of bed today, and I was like, I feel pain in like the bottoms of my feet. That's a weird place to feel pain, but I'm getting older, and that's kind of a normal thing to feel, I guess. Some of you have pain because of an injury that you had, or like a surgery that didn't go quite right, or Kyle cut his hand open this weekend. I mean, there's just a variety of things that could be contributing to the pain that you're experiencing. But pain goes beyond just the physical, right? And so some of you are experiencing emotional pain, or you're experiencing relational pain, or psychological pain, or you're experiencing pain at work, or pain in your neighborhood, or pain in your family, and pain can take many forms. In 2019, just over 20% of adults in the U.S. were experiencing chronic physical pain. That's 50 million Americans. The CDC breaks that down by race and gender, even geography. And perhaps the most interesting part of this breakdown is how significantly the likelihood of chronic pain in your life will be as you move farther away from an urban center. It's about 16% of American adults in an urban center experiencing chronic pain, but in a rural area, it's a little bit over 28% of adults experience chronic pain of some kind. Linda Searing writes this in the Washington Post about pain. No matter the cause, the treatment for chronic pain usually focuses not on curing it, but on managing it, reducing the pain that increases people's ability to move and function so their day-to-day life can improve. Treatment options include prescription pain medication, acupuncture, physical therapy, relaxation techniques, biofeedback, massage therapy, psychotherapy, and behavior modification. She goes on to say this. All told, according to estimates cited by the CDC, the bill in the United States for chronic pain totals at least $560 billion a year in medical expenses, lost productivity, and disability programs. Much of that money is spent on specifically not just various forms of behavior modification and lost productivity, as was stated before, but a lot of it comes from our costs of prescription drugs. And many of you paid attention to the way pharmaceuticals have come into the spotlight, and the way opioids specifically have played a role in not only our conversation about pain specifically, but also the legality of them and the issue that the role they have played in drug overdoses and deaths, not only in the United States but the world over. Opioid deaths have continued to increase since 1999, year over year. About 96,000 Americans die of drug overdoses per year, and opioid users make up about 70% of those. It's a massive problem. If you're unfamiliar with the backstory, Big Pharma has been to blame for some of this, or at least this is kind of what the lawsuits are telling us, that big pharmaceutical companies have created these drugs, particularly Purdue Pharma in 1996 creating OxyContin, and then telling the general public that this was a non-addictive drug that could be used to cure pain and rid yourself of pain with almost no side effects whatsoever. They continued to up the dose and increase the sort of initial dosing, and then they pushed their sales reps, and they pushed the marketing, and they pushed the advertising to say, this is okay for you. It's healthy, it's safe, you won't see any change in your life whatsoever. It turns out all of that was a lie. And Oxy, along with a lot of other opioids, are actually highly addictive. And they dramatically change the way that you live your life and the way that your life functions. And they do mitigate and medicate pain, but they do not rid yourself of the origin of that pain. The FDA played a major role in this as well, and I think it affected our ability to trust the FDA. And last year when we were supposed to trust the FDA and with vaccine safety, I think we struggled with that a little bit. A lot of people were saying, well, you led us astray once before, and now there are lots and lots and lots of drug overdoses in the U.S., and we're struggling to trust you again. That's a very normal thing and understandable. If you want to get caught up on this and you'd rather watch the movie than read the book, I know some of you would prefer that. Dope Sick on Hulu is actually a really interesting series that kind of goes into the history specifically about Purdue Pharma. It is not a documentary. They take creative liberties, but on the whole, from casting to storytelling, it's a really solid series that helps you get your head around it. regardless of where you're getting your information on this and what you're learning, whether you watch the news or you're watching something like Dope Sick or you're maybe reading about this somewhere, it is safe to say that America is in pain. We're all suffering and experiencing different kinds of pain. And the American response to pain is medication. The American response to pain is mitigation. The goal is to numb the pain itself, but not to get to the origin of the pain. My wife Julie worked at a pain clinic for a while as a nurse, and it was sort of true of the staff and the doctors there that the goal was to treat the symptoms, but not the disease itself. Patients would come in for steroid or lidocaine injections, and they were there to receive a numbness to the pain, but not for the pain itself or the source of the pain to be treated. In his book, How Not to Die, Dr. Michael Greger explains how the medical system in our country works at a really high level, a broad level. Physicians become aware of a problem. They are paid to treat that problem. They are often incentivized to treat that problem ongoingly, and therefore they medicate the symptoms without dealing with the root causes. This is a caricature of the entire system. I mean in no way to indict any particular person working in the medical field. As I said, my wife has been a nurse for 15 years, and I'm very proud of the work that she does. But I'm more dubious about the system itself and how it's designed and how it works. Dr. Greger writes this in his book. He said, "This was my wake-up call. I opened my eyes to the depressing fact that there are other forces at work in medicine besides science. The U.S. healthcare system runs on a fee-for-service model in which doctors get paid for the pills and procedures they prescribe, rewarding quantity over quality. They don't get reimbursed for time spent counseling our patients about the benefits of healthy eating. If doctors were instead paid for performance, there would be a financial incentive to treat the lifestyle causes of disease. Until the model of reimbursement changes, I don't expect great changes on medical care or medical education." I highly recommend this book. It's fascinating on how the things we put in our body affect the way that we live our lives. And perhaps the best part is if you listen to an audiobook, the doctor who reads it, his voice sounds like a cross between Kai Ryssdal from NPR's Marketplace and the adult version of Smalls who narrates The Sandlot. So it's very hard to exactly pin down exactly who listens. There sounds like rather, but you should listen to it. It's really interesting. He's a fascinating person, and there's a lot to be said about how we treat our bodies and how we treat our minds and how we treat ourselves and the way that affects the way that we live our lives. Now, granted, despite the fact that many of us are experiencing pain right now as I speak, despite the fact that we tend to treat pain in the U.S. by treating the symptoms itself, there is another way to consider the way we look at pain and understand pain. We don't have to be limited just to that, just because that's the experience that we tend to have. Whether we go to the doctor and have that experience or we're talking to a friend and we're having that experience. You see, pain is more pervasive than we like to think. We think of it typically as physical pain. We typically think of it oftentimes as chronic pain, but oftentimes pain can be acute or temporary. It can be emotional, it can be relational, it can be spiritual, it can be communal. There are various ways that we experience pain, and therefore, there are various ways that we can go about taking care of that pain and treating that pain. Pain is everywhere. It's natural. It's something that most of us experience throughout our life, and yet we all know this: it's not normal. It's natural, but it's not normal. It's natural in that it's something that all of us experience, but it's not normal in the sense that we should be experiencing it, right? And so whatever the pain is that you're experiencing, the pain that you're feeling, you know that it doesn't have to be that way. And that's a lot of times why you seek treatment. You know that it shouldn't be that way. And when we lament, we say the world is not as it should be. Or you could be more specific and say, my body is not as it should be. My mind is not as it should be. My job is not as it should be. My relationships are not as they should be. We lament these things. But what are we to do about it? What are we to do with this? What should we do with our pain? What is it supposed to mean to us? It's something that all of us experience. It's normal and at the same time, or it's natural and at the same time not normal, and we rarely talk about it. In the season of Lent, we're going to talk about pain. We're going to talk about the forms of pain that we experience, and we're going to talk about what the Bible says about pain, what Jesus does about pain, and how we as Christians are to uniquely approach pain. The Christian ethos and ethic around pain is different than that of our country and culture. I'll clarify this a few times throughout the series. I don't mean to say that there's like a quick fix in Christianity for pain, and that if we just go about it that way, then we don't have to worry about all the other ways. That's not at all what I mean. Rather, I think that there is an opportunity for us to look at pain in a unique way as followers of the way of Jesus, and then couple that with the way that our culture sees and treats pain. It's kind of a both-and situation. The Bible says a lot about pain. Jesus had a lot to say about pain. In fact, the incarnation itself, Jesus becoming human, God becoming human through Jesus, the incarnation itself was a taking on of pain. This is the whole point of John 3:16. God loved humanity so much that he sent his son as an expression of that love, even at his own expense. And in doing so, Jesus took on all the regular pain of being a human being, all the like just natural, normal stuff, some of which we've already mentioned. He stubbed his toe on the coffee table that he probably made himself. He stepped on whatever kids played with before there were Legos around. He probably got whatever the first century version of the stomach flu was. He experienced relational pain and familial pain and spiritual pain, mental pain. Those are just the pains that kind of came along with being a regular human being. And then there were pains that he chose, pain that he stepped into, pain that he chose for himself, relational and emotional pain of saying unpopular and even tyrannical things in crowds that he knew would not receive those things and therefore rejected him and isolated him. He chose to live a simple life of poverty in which he did not have material possessions or a place to lay his head. He chose that kind of pain. And then he chose pain for periods of time, like the 40 days that he spent in the desert where he didn't eat, and he experienced a tremendous amount of discomfort and challenge and difficulty. Not to mention the sort of coup d'etat of all of the pain that Jesus experienced, the kind of everything that came together and culminated with his crucifixion, his death on the cross. Jesus chose and took on a tremendous amount of pain just by becoming human, and then in addition to that, multiple times throughout that experience, he chose specific pain. Jesus was no stranger to pain, and he had a lot to say about it for himself and for his followers. And at the end of John chapter 15, after all the lovely words about living on the vine and being like abiding with Christ and that beautiful word picture, he says this: "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world. But I have chosen you out of the world, and that is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you, a servant is no greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also." And then at the beginning of 16, he says this: "All this I have told you so that you will not fall away. They will put you out of the synagogue. In fact, the time is coming when anyone who kills you will think that they are offering a sacrifice to God. They will do such things because they have not known the Father or me. I've told you this so that when their time comes, you will remember that I warned you about them." And in essence, Jesus is saying in these words, this will happen to you. Now, granted, he's speaking to a specific group of people who all would experience tremendous persecution for their faith and many of them would go on to die for their faith. But he's saying, this is true for you. In the same way that I have chosen pain and difficulty and challenge in my life, you will too. And then he says this at the end of the chapter. Something far more broad, something far more universal, and this starts to give us an idea of the Christian ethic and ethos around pain, which, like I said, is different from the way we typically handle pain, although not necessarily mutually exclusive. He says this: "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." This statement, because of the structure of the sentence, its position in the chapter, its use of the word world rather than they, all of this tells me that he's not just talking to his specific group of friends anymore about their recent and immediate situations that they're about to experience, but he's saying, you, all of us, we will experience trouble. Another word for that is suffering, and yet take heart, because I have overcome the world. Pain is universal. It's something that's natural and it's a part of our life. But that isn't meant at all to like trivialize it or minimalize it, rather to recognize it and acknowledge it and make it something that's validated in our lives, because it's true for all of us. But the Christian response to pain can be broken down into, I think, 3 parts, particularly when we follow this specific thing that Jesus said. The first thing that Jesus does here that I think is so vital for us and oftentimes skipped is he acknowledges the existence of pain. Pain comes in many forms and varying degrees, but it is true for all of us that we experience pain at some level. In this life, you will have trouble. In this life, you will experience suffering. Physical, emotional, relational, racial, ethnic, geographic, communal, individual, familial, mental, neurological, financial, circumstantial, systemic, acute, chronic, whatever. There's a million forms of pain and a million ways that it can happen, but it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to me. It's natural. It's also not normal, and we know that, and that is why we lament and say that the world is not as it should be. One of the things that I found extremely helpful on this was a program that I got to be a part of a couple of years ago at a different church. I got to help kind of set it up and walk a couple people through it. And then a good friend of mine just started working through this program recently. And my friend is on step 4 of this program. And this program, in step 4, requires that its participants take a searching and moral inventory, a fearless and moral inventory of their life. And the way that this program words it is you list out all the things that are a harm to you or a harm done by you. Where did you cause pain, or where was pain caused to you? If you're familiar with the 12-step program, this will be familiar language to you, but the problem with the 12-step program, or the only thing I don't like about it, is it's not something that's really given out to just about everybody. You really don't get access to it or exposed to it until you develop some sort of a dependency or addiction. And really some of these steps, maybe all of these steps, are actually great for all of us to consider, everybody to participate in. And I think it would be helpful for all of us, any one of us, no matter where we are in our faith journey or where we are in life, to consider taking a fearless and searching moral inventory of harms done to us and harms done by us, an inventory of pain. Now, Lent is a perfect time for this, okay? It's a perfect time to say, what has caused me pain and where have I caused pain? Where is there pain in the world? What does pain actually look like? Pain on a large scale, pain on a small scale. It's probably not something that would be helpful for us and healthy for us to do all the time and just constantly get stuck spinning our wheels and where is there pain around us, but to take time on some sort of a regular basis, maybe annually in Lent, to say, where is there pain in my life? And simply recognize what Jesus did. In this life, you will have trouble. Where is it? Identify it. The second thing that this verse does, this statement by Jesus, is it reminds me that there is an origin to pain. In this world, you will have trouble. The life that you live in the world around you, you will experience trouble. Pain has an origin. In a physical way, it's maybe a disease or an injury, and pain itself is the symptom a lot of times. Whatever pain you're identifying with right now, it has an origin. Now, broadly speaking, that origin, that pain origin, is sin and brokenness in the world. If we go all the way back to the beginning story, Adam and Eve, they're interacting with the serpent, they're tempted, they give into this, they're disobedient to God, and almost immediately after that, God finds them and he says to them, your work is going to be very painful now. Childbearing is going to be painful now. Your relationships are going to be painful now. Pain is a symptom of brokenness, which is at its root. Now, if we were to be more specific, though, the various pains that you're experiencing, whether they're mental, emotional, relational, physical, whatever they are, might have a root cause that needs to be rooted out. They might have a root cause that needs to be identified and sussed out. So in addition to making your inventory of harms done by you or harms done to you, the pain that you experience in your life, the pain that you observe or witness around the world, take some time, if you are able, to dig a little deeper and ask yourself, what is the origin of that pain? Where does it come from? How does it manifest itself in my life? Thirdly, and I think this is probably the most important part of this whole thing, and this is where the Christian ethos and ethic around pain changes. There's a required cost to wellness. There's a required cost to the way that we can experience wholeness and healing in our life. Now, in a series on pain, we're going to talk about pain for the next several weeks, we are going to talk a little bit about what healing is and what healing looks like. But I want to be really clear to you here that healing is not one of those things that's just guaranteed to everybody if you just believe harder or try harder or trust more. That's not how healing works. To be quite frank with you, healing is a mystery to me. It's something that I don't always understand. And healing is not always available to everybody in this life. And that's confusing to me, but that is the way that healing seems to work and to function. But let me tell you this and offer this to you. Perhaps for you, the most healing thing in the pain that you've identified is actually acceptance of the existence of the pain itself. Acceptance itself can be extremely healing. To accept that this is a reality, maybe find what the origin is, and maybe do some things to help treat it and go after it and do something about it. But accepting the existence of the pain is itself a step towards wellness and wholeness. But the required cost of wellness is this. Jesus says very specifically in this verse, he says, I have overcome the world. The thing that's causing you the pain, the thing that is causing you the difficulty and the trouble in your life, I have overcome that thing. And this could easily sound like a pithy platitude to say like, well, Jesus absorbs your pain. Jesus takes your pain away. Isn't that really, really great and really, really neat? And if you've been in pain for any length of time, you'll know that that is an inadequate way to read this, an inadequate way to understand this. Rather, what I think Jesus is saying here is actually best reiterated in a couple of different places where he speaks on this and where it's spoken about him on this. In another part of the scriptures, he says, come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest. 1 Peter 1:5, Peter says, cast your cares or anxieties on him. And the way that these are written, the grammatical syntax and the way that they're put together is the assumption that you're ongoingly doing this. Cast your cares on Jesus all the time. Come to me all the time with your anxieties and your fear and your pain. I am overcoming the world every single day. These aren't one-time situations, and in modern American evangelicalism, we tend to think that there's like a moment where we get saved or we join the family of God or however you want to phrase that, and like everything is just up and to the right from there. And then we're sorely disappointed when actually everything just continues to hurt. Everything continues to be hard and frustrating and broken. And unfortunately, that was an over-promise, under-deliver situation that I don't know who set out to really create that, but that has never really been true. The Christian ethos and ethic around pain is that it's there, it probably has some sort of root cause or origin, and there is a cost to that wellness. And Jesus says, I'm that cost. I'm the one who's here to absorb it. The cost to it is being paid by me. And our task or our goal, or rather, probably best said, our invitation is to take that to Jesus on a regular basis, like you would a close friend. There's a lot of ways that we can describe Jesus, and some of these analogies and metaphors are helpful, and some of them can feel really trite. But I think in this situation, if you think of a close, trusted friend, someone that you can come to on a regular, with some sort of regularity and say, this is what I'm experiencing. Jesus has offered himself in that regard right now to you. You can come to me regularly with this thing, and in doing so, I absorb the pain right alongside you. Many of us are looking for a solve to our pain, a fix that will make it go away entirely. I don't know that that's readily available for you. I don't know what you're experiencing, and I don't know that Jesus promises that specifically. But he does say, I'm here with you in it, and I'm here to absorb it alongside you on a day-to-day basis as you and I do this together. For the season of Lent, we're going to explore what pain is. I hope that you'll take some time to write out harms done to you, harms done by you, and I hope that you'll take some time to root out some of the root causes of those pains. But more than that, and probably the most important part of this season, is that if crucifixion is going to precede resurrection, then you and I have to sort of join Jesus in that crucifixion throughout the season of Lent. And that's what we're going to do together, and I hope that you'll join in. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, thank you for an opportunity to open your word and understand a little bit about what Jesus had to say about pain. God, I think it is oftentimes unsatisfactory to consider something as vast and as pervasive as pain and then think that maybe it's just not all solved so quickly and easily. Like that's what I would want, and I think that's what all of us would want, that pain would be something that could be solved quickly and easily. And instead of snapping your fingers and ridding the world of it, you come alongside us in it. And although that isn't satisfactory all the time, I pray, God, that it would be inspiring and healing for us throughout the season of Lent as we recognize it. We love you, Lord. We pray these things in your name. Amen.